Have you ever felt like a stranger in your own life? Like you're living someone else's dream, following someone else's path, wearing someone else's mask? There's a moment in every person's journey when they realize that everything they thought they were was actually everything they were taught to be. Your values, your dreams, your fears, even your personality, how much of it is genuinely yours, and how much is just programming? Today, we're going to explore one of the most terrifying yet liberating truths of human existence. That to find who you truly are, you must first lose who you think you are. This isn't about becoming someone new. It's about stripping away everything that was never you in the first place. And I warn you, this process will feel like death, because in many ways it is. Carl Jung had a revolutionary insight about human nature. He understood that what we call personality is largely a construction, a mask we wear to survive in society. He called this the persona, from the Latin word for mask. From the moment you were born, you began learning how to be loved. You discovered that certain behaviors brought approval, while others brought rejection. Smile and you get attention. Cry too much and you're labeled difficult. Be agreeable and you're good. Express anger and you're bad. Layer by layer, year by year, you built an identity based not on your authentic nature, but on what worked, what kept you safe, what made you acceptable. Think about it, how many of your current beliefs did you actually choose? How many of your goals are genuinely yours, and how many are inherited expectations? When you say, I am, what follows is often a collection of labels, roles, and identities that were handed to you by others. You might say, I am a lawyer, but you became a lawyer because your parents valued security. You might say, I am responsible, but you became responsible because chaos felt dangerous as a child. You might say, I am strong, but you became strong because vulnerability was punished. The terrifying truth is that most people live their entire lives as prisoners of their own persona. They mistake their survival strategy for their identity. They confuse their adaptive mechanisms with their authentic self. But here's what Jung understood that most people don't. This constructed self, no matter how successful or admired, will eventually become a prison. Because it's not you. It's a character you've been playing for so long that you've forgotten your acting. And the price of this forgetting? A life of quiet desperation. A constant sense that something is missing. A feeling of being disconnected from your own existence. The persona that once saved you now suffocates you. The mask that once protected you now prevents you from being seen. The identity that once gave you belonging now keeps you from becoming. This is why losing yourself isn't just an option. It's inevitable. Because anything built on false foundations will eventually crumble. The question isn't whether you'll lose your constructed self, but whether you'll have the courage to let it go consciously, or whether life will force it from you through crisis. There comes a moment in every awakening soul when the life you've built no longer fits. It might come suddenly, a job loss, a relationship ending, a health crisis. Or it might come gradually, a growing sense of emptiness, a feeling that you're living someone else's life, a quiet voice that whispers, this isn't me. Jung called this the call to individuation, the psyche's demand for authenticity. It's as if your soul rebels against the prison of your persona and demands to be free. But make no mistake, this isn't a gentle process. Losing yourself feels like dying because, in a very real sense, you are dying. The identity you've carried, the self-image you've maintained, the story you've told about who you are, all of it must be surrendered. This is why most people resist it. They sense that something needs to change, but they try to modify the persona instead of abandoning it. They change jobs instead of questioning their relationship with work. They change partners instead of examining their patterns in love. They change locations instead of confronting their inner landscape. But the call to disintegration cannot be negotiated with. It demands everything. It demands that you stop pretending to be who you're not, even if you don't yet know who you are. I remember a client who told me, I don't know who I am anymore. I used to be so sure about everything, and now I question everything. This wasn't a breakdown, it was a breakthrough. For the first time in her life, she was asking the right questions. The disintegration phase is marked by several experiences. First, you begin to see through your own stories. The narratives you've told about your life start to feel hollow. You realize that you've been living according to scripts written by others. Second, you lose interest in things that once motivated you. Success, approval, security, these external motivators lose their grip. You find yourself asking, what's the point? Not from depression, but from a deeper wisdom. Third, you begin to feel homeless in your own life. Your relationships feel superficial, your work feels meaningless, your routines feel mechanical. You're like a snake that's outgrown its skin. You must shed it to survive, but the process is uncomfortable and frightening. Fourth, you start to notice the gap between who you are and who you've been pretending to be. You catch yourself performing emotions you don't feel, expressing opinions you don't hold, living values you don't believe. This is the dark night of the soul that mystics speak of. It's the psychological death that precedes rebirth. It's the necessary disintegration that makes integration possible. But here's what they don't tell you about this process. It's not meant to be comfortable. It's not meant to make sense. It's meant to strip away everything that isn't essentially you, and that includes your need for comfort and certainty. The invitation isn't to fix yourself or improve yourself. The invitation is to lose yourself so completely that you discover what remains when everything false has been burned away. When you begin to lose yourself, you enter what I call the wilderness of unknowing. This is the space between who you were and who you're becoming. It's a place of profound uncertainty, where all your old reference points have disappeared but new ones haven't yet emerged. In this wilderness, you can't answer the question, who am I? Because you're in the process of discovering it. You can't plan your future because you don't know what you want. You can't maintain your old relationships because you're no longer the person they knew. This is perhaps the most terrifying aspect of the journey, the complete loss of identity. You wake up one day and realize that you don't know yourself at all. The person you thought you were was a construction, and now that it's crumbling, you're faced with a terrifying question. If I'm not who I thought I was, then who am I? The wilderness of unknowing has several characteristics. First, there's a profound sense of aloneness. Not loneliness, but aloneness. You realize that this journey must be walked alone, that no one can do it for you, and that no one can fully understand what you're going through. Second, there's a loss of direction. All your old goals and ambitions seem irrelevant. You don't know what you want to do with your life because you don't know who you are. This can be paralyzing for people who are used to having a plan. Third, there's a heightened sensitivity to authenticity. You become allergic to anything false. Small talk becomes unbearable. Superficial relationships feel suffocating. You crave depth and meaning, but you're not sure how to find it. Fourth, there's a deep questioning of everything. Nothing is sacred. No belief is unexamined. No assumption is unquestioned. You might question your career, your relationships, your beliefs, your values. Everything is up for review. Fifth, there's a strange kind of freedom. While the uncertainty is uncomfortable, there's also a liberation in having no fixed identity to maintain. You're free to explore, to experiment, to discover what resonates with your authentic nature. But here's the crucial insight. The wilderness of unknowing isn't a problem to be solved. It's a space to be inhabited. It's not a phase to rush through. It's a sacred time of gestation. Jung understood that this period of confusion and uncertainty is actually the fertile ground from which authentic selfhood emerges. It's in the darkness of not knowing that the light of true self-knowledge begins to dawn. The temptation in this phase is to grab onto a new identity quickly, to find a new persona to replace the old one. But this is a mistake. The wilderness of unknowing is teaching you to be comfortable with uncertainty, to trust the process even when you can't see the destination. This is where many people get stuck. They can't tolerate the discomfort of not knowing who they are, so they retreat back into their old persona or adopt a new one. But the authentic self cannot be rushed into existence. It must be allowed to emerge in its own time, in its own way. The wilderness of unknowing is not a punishment. It's a purification. It's stripping away everything that isn't essentially you so that what remains is pure, authentic, and true. In the depths of the wilderness, when all your identities have been stripped away, when all your stories have been revealed as constructions, when all your roles have been abandoned, something remarkable begins to happen. You discover what Jung called the self, not the ego self, not the persona self, but the authentic self that has been there all along, waiting beneath the layers of conditioning and programming. This self is not something you create or construct. It's something you uncover. It's not something you become. It's something you recognize. It's not an achievement, it's a remembering. What remains when everything falls away is your essence. And your essence has several characteristics. First, it's peaceful. Not the peace of having everything figured out, but the peace of accepting not knowing. It's the peace of being rather than doing, of existing rather than achieving. Second, it's creative. When you're not trying to maintain a persona, when you're not worried about what others think, when you're not following someone else's script, your natural creativity emerges. You begin to create from authenticity rather than from expectation. Third, it's compassionate. When you've faced your own darkness, when you've seen through your own illusions, when you've experienced your own humanity, you naturally develop compassion for others who are still struggling with their personas. Fourth, it's courageous. Not the courage of the warrior, but the courage of the authentic, the courage to be yourself regardless of how others react, the courage to speak your truth even when it's uncomfortable, the courage to live your values even when it's costly. Fifth, it's whole. The authentic self is integrated. It doesn't reject the shadow or deny the light. It embraces all aspects of your humanity, the good and the bad, the light and the dark, the strengths and the weaknesses. But here's what's most remarkable about the authentic self. It's been there all along. It's not something you developed or achieved. It's something you remembered. It's something you returned to. Think about moments in your life when you felt most yourself. Moments when you weren't trying to be anything, when you weren't performing for anyone, when you were simply being. Those moments were glimpses of your authentic self. The process of losing yourself to find yourself is really the process of removing everything that's covering your authentic self. It's like a sculptor who doesn't create a statue but reveals it by removing everything that isn't the statue. Your authentic self has a voice, and it's different from the voice of your persona. It's quieter but more powerful. It's gentler but more certain. It's more vulnerable but more courageous. Your authentic self has desires, and they're different from the desires of your persona. They're simpler but more profound. They're more personal but more universal. They're more humble but more meaningful. Your authentic self has values, and they're different from the values of your persona. They're not borrowed from others but discovered within yourself. They're not imposed from outside but arise from inside. This is what you find when you lose yourself, not a new identity, but your original nature. Not a constructed self, but your unconditioned self. Not who you should be, but who you truly are. The journey from losing yourself to finding yourself is not a straight line. It's a spiral, a dance, a continuous process of death and rebirth. But there comes a moment when something shifts, when the wilderness of unknowing begins to bloom with new life. This is the rebirth not into a new persona, but into authentic being. It's the emergence of the self that has been waiting beneath all the layers of conditioning and programming. The rebirth is marked by several experiences. First, you begin to live from the inside out rather than the outside in. Your actions flow from your authentic nature rather than from external expectations. You make choices based on what feels true rather than what looks good. Second, you develop what Jung called the transcendent function, the ability to hold paradox, to be comfortable with complexity, to embrace the full spectrum of human experience without trying to resolve it into simple answers. Third, you begin to relate to others from authenticity rather than from need. You no longer need others to complete you or validate you. You can love without losing yourself, care without sacrificing yourself, give without depleting yourself. Fourth, you develop a different relationship with success and failure. You measure your life not by external achievements but by internal alignment. You define success as living authentically rather than living impressively. Fifth, you begin to trust yourself in a way you never have before. Not the ego trust of thinking you know everything, but the deeper trust of knowing you can handle whatever comes, the trust of knowing you can find your way even in the darkness. The rebirth into authentic being is not a destination, it's a way of traveling. It's not something you achieve once and then maintain. It's something you choose moment by moment, day by day. Living authentically means being willing to be seen, to be vulnerable, to be imperfect. It means speaking your truth even when your voice shakes. It means following your path even when others don't understand. It means being yourself even when it's uncomfortable. But here's the beautiful paradox. When you stop trying to be someone else, you become more yourself than you ever imagined possible. When you stop trying to be perfect, you become more human. When you stop trying to be impressive, you become more genuine. The authentic self is not superior to others, it's simply true to itself. It's not better than the persona, it's more real. It's not more advanced, it's more honest. Living from the authentic self means accepting that you'll be misunderstood by some, rejected by others, and criticized by many. But it also means that you'll be deeply known by those who matter, truly loved by those who can see you, and respected by those who value authenticity. The rebirth into authentic being is not the end of growth. It's the beginning of real growth. When you're no longer wasting energy maintaining a false self, you can use that energy to become more of who you truly are. This is the ultimate paradox of the human journey. You must lose yourself to find yourself, you must die to be reborn, you must surrender to be free. So I ask you now, looking directly into your eyes, are you ready to lose yourself to find yourself? Are you prepared to question everything you think you know about who you are? Are you willing to enter the wilderness of unknowing, to sit with uncertainty, to trust the process even when you can't see the destination? The journey from persona to authentic self is not for the faint of heart. It will challenge everything you believe about yourself. It will ask you to surrender everything you think you are. It will require you to trust something deeper than your conditioning, something truer than your programming. But on the other side of this journey lies something precious beyond measure. The gift of being genuinely yourself. The freedom of living from your authentic nature. The peace of no longer having to pretend to be someone you're not. Your authentic self is not something you need to create or construct. It's something you need to remember and return to. It's been waiting for you all along, beneath all the layers of who you thought you had to be. The question isn't whether you'll lose your constructed self. Life will eventually strip away everything that isn't essentially you. The question is whether you'll have the courage to let it go consciously, to participate in your own rebirth, to choose authenticity over comfort. If this message resonates with you, if you feel the call to begin this journey, write in the comments, I choose authenticity over comfort. Let's see how many souls are ready to lose themselves to find themselves. And remember, this isn't a journey you take once. It's a way of life. Every day you have the choice to live from your persona or from your authentic self. Choose wisely. The wilderness of unknowing is waiting. Your authentic self is waiting. The question is, are you ready to begin?